Alexander Chen sat at the head of the mahogany conference table, barely listening to the quarterly financial reports his team was presenting. The numbers were good. Actually, they were better than good. His tech company had just closed another major deal, and the board members around him were practically glowing with satisfaction. At 35, Alexander had built an empire that most people could only dream about. His company, Chen Technologies, was worth billions, and his personal wealth had recently landed him on the cover of 3 different business magazines. But right now, none of that mattered. His phone had just buzzed against the polished wood, and when he glanced down at the screen, his entire world tilted sideways. The message was from Emily, his ex-wife. Alexander's heart started pounding so hard he was sure the CFO sitting next to him could hear it. Emily never contacted him, not since the divorce papers were finalized 2 years ago. They had agreed it was better that way. A clean break, no awkward text messages or uncomfortable phone calls, just 2 people who once promised forever, now living completely separate lives. His fingers trembled slightly as he unlocked his phone to read the full message. Alex, I'm desperate. The baby won't stop crying and we're out of formula. Can you pick some up on your way home? I know things are complicated between us, but please. Alexander read it once, then twice, then 3 more times, each word hitting him like a physical blow. Baby? Emily had a baby? His mind raced backward through everything he knew about her life since the divorce. She had remarried about 6 months ago. He knew because his assistant had accidentally mentioned seeing the wedding announcement in the society pages. He had pretended not to care, had thrown himself even deeper into his work that week. The husband was a doctor, he remembered, someone stable and responsible. Everything Alexander apparently wasn't. But a baby? How had he not known? Had she been pregnant at the wedding? The timeline seemed too short unless… Mr. Chen, your thoughts on the projection? Alexander looked up to find 12 pairs of eyes staring at him. His assistant Jennifer was giving him a concerned look from across the table. She knew him well enough to recognize when something was wrong. I need to step out, Alexander heard himself say. His voice sounded strange, distant. But sir, we're in the middle of… I need to step out, he repeated, already pushing his chair back. Continue without me. Jennifer, handle any questions. He didn't wait for a response. He grabbed his phone and walked out of the conference room, ignoring the confused murmurs behind him. In the hallway, he leaned against the wall and read the message again. The baby won't stop crying. Can you pick some up on your way home? I know things are complicated between us. That last line, what did that even mean? Complicated didn't begin to cover what they had been through. The fights about his work schedule, the canceled dinner reservations, the conversation about having children that he kept postponing because the company needed him, because there was always one more deal, one more meeting, one more reason to wait. Emily had wanted a family. She had been clear about that from the beginning, but Alexander had always said someday, and when things settle down and let's wait until the company is more stable. The company was never stable enough. There was always something more important demanding his attention, until the day Emily packed her bags and told him she was done waiting for a someday that would never come. And now she had a baby. With someone else. Alexander felt something twist painfully in his chest. It wasn't just jealousy, though that was definitely part of it. It was regret. It was the sudden, crushing realization of everything he had lost. Everything he had chosen to give up without even realizing he was making that choice. But why was she texting him? Why was she asking him to bring formula? Where was her new husband? His rational mind, the one that had built a billion-dollar company through logic and strategic thinking, told him to ignore the message. To text back something polite but distant, to maintain the boundaries they had established. She had made her choice when she remarried. He had made his choice when he let her walk away. But his heart, the part of him that had loved Emily more than he had ever admitted even to himself, was already making a different decision. He pulled up his driver's contact, then stopped. This felt too personal for a driver. He needed to do this himself. Sir? Jennifer had followed him out of the conference room. Is everything okay? Cancel my afternoon appointments, he said, already heading toward the elevator. Cancel them? But you have the meeting with the investors and then the dinner with… Cancel everything, Jennifer. May I ask why? Alexander paused at the elevator doors, his finger hovering over the button. What was he supposed to say? That his ex-wife had a baby and needed formula? That he was about to drive across town to help the woman who had every right to hate him? Family emergency, he finally said. Jennifer's eyebrows shot up. Alexander never took time off for family matters. He barely took time off at all. The last vacation he had taken was his honeymoon with Emily, and even then he had spent half of it on conference calls. Of course, sir. I'll handle everything. 20 minutes later, Alexander found himself standing in the baby aisle of an upscale grocery store, staring at what appeared to be 500 different types of formula. How was anyone supposed to know which one to buy? There were different stages, different brands, different special formulas for different needs. A young mother with a baby strapped to her chest noticed him staring helplessly at the shelves. "First time buying formula?" she asked with a kind smile. "Is it that obvious? You have that panicked look. How old is the baby?" Alexander realized he had no idea. I'm not sure." The woman looked confused but didn't pry. "Well, if it's a newborn to 6 months, you want stage 1. If you don't know about any special dietary needs, just go with a standard brand. This one here," she pointed to a blue container, "is pretty popular. Most babies do fine with it." Alexander grabbed 3 containers. If he was going to do this, he might as well make sure Emily had enough. As he drove toward Emily's apartment, the containers of formula sitting in the passenger seat like silent witnesses to his confusion, Alexander couldn't stop thinking about that night 2 years ago. The night Emily had finally given him an ultimatum. "I love you, Alex," she had said, tears streaming down her face, "but I can't keep loving someone who isn't there. I can't keep building a life with someone who chooses spreadsheets over me every single time." He had tried to argue, had promised to change, had said all the things he thought she wanted to hear. But Emily had just shaken her head sadly. "You've been promising to change for 3 years. I don't think you even know how anymore." She had been right. He hadn't changed. If anything, after she left, he had thrown himself even more completely into his work. It was easier than dealing with the emptiness of his penthouse apartment. Easier than acknowledging what he had lost. Now, as he pulled up outside her building, Alexander sat in his car for a long moment, staring at the familiar windows. He had helped her move into this place after the divorce. It had seemed important at the time to make sure she was safe, even if they weren't together anymore. He grabbed the formula and walked toward the entrance, his heart pounding harder with each step. What was he even doing here? What would he say to her? How would she react? He pressed the buzzer for her apartment, half hoping she wouldn't answer. But she did. "Hello? Emily," he said. "It's me. I have the formula." There was a long silence on the other end. Then, in a voice filled with complete confusion, she said, "Alex, what are you talking about? What formula?" The confusion in Emily's voice through the intercom made Alexander's stomach drop. He stood there on the sidewalk, holding 3 containers of baby formula like an idiot, suddenly wondering if he had completely lost his mind. "The formula," he repeated, his voice sounding uncertain even to his own ears. "You texted me. You said the baby was crying and you needed formula." Another pause. Then the buzzer sounded, unlocking the door. "Come up," Emily said. "I think we need to talk." Alexander's hands were actually shaking as he rode the elevator to the 4th floor. What had he done? Had he misread the message somehow? Had it been meant for someone else and sent to him by mistake? But it had clearly said his name. It had said Alex. The elevator doors opened and there she was, standing in her doorway. Emily looked exactly the same as she had 2 years ago, yet somehow completely different. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was wearing comfortable clothes, yoga pants, and an oversized sweater. She looked tired, but there was something softer about her now. Something peaceful that hadn't been there during the last year of their marriage, when every conversation had felt like walking through a minefield. "Alex," she said, and the way she said his name, with that mixture of surprise and concern, made his chest ache. "What's going on?" He held up the formula containers. "You texted me, about half an hour ago. You said you needed formula for the baby." Emily's eyebrows drew together. She pulled out her phone from her pocket and started scrolling. Alexander watched her face change as she read something, her eyes widening. "Oh no," she whispered. "Oh, Alex, I'm so sorry." Before he could ask what she meant, a baby's cry pierced the air from inside the apartment. It wasn't a gentle cry. It was the full-blown wailing of an infant who had reached the end of their patience. "Come in," Emily said quickly, stepping aside. Please, just come in. Alexander followed her into the apartment, his confusion growing with every step. The living room looked different than he remembered. There was a playpen in the corner, baby toys scattered across the coffee table, and a woman he didn't recognize was pacing back and forth, bouncing a red-faced, screaming baby in her arms. The woman looked up when they entered, and Alexander could see the family resemblance immediately. She had Emily's eyes, though hers were currently filled with exhaustion and stress. Did you get it? The woman asked desperately. Please tell me you got the formula. I got it, Alexander said automatically, holding up the containers. The woman practically lunged for them. Thank God. Katie, can you help me? I need to mix this fast. Emily rushed over, taking one of the containers from Alexander's hands. The two women disappeared into the kitchen, leaving Alexander standing awkwardly in the living room with a crying baby, whose wails were slowly diminishing as the promise of food drew near. He set the remaining formula containers on the coffee table and looked around. There were pictures on the walls he hadn't seen before. Emily with the other woman, laughing at what looked like a beach. Emily holding the same baby who was now in the kitchen, her face lit up with pure joy. Emily at what looked like a family gathering, surrounded by people who loved her, a life he wasn't part of anymore. Here we go, sweet girl. The woman's voice came from the kitchen, now soft and soothing. Here we go. Mama's got you. Mama. So this was the woman's baby, not Emily's. Alexander felt like the world's biggest fool. He had walked out of the most important meeting of the quarter, driven across town, and shown up at his ex-wife's door with baby formula because of a text message he had completely misunderstood. Emily emerged from the kitchen, shaking her head with a mixture of amusement and sympathy. Alex, sit down, please, let me explain. He sat on the edge of the couch, still feeling off balance. Emily settled into the chair across from him, the same chair where they used to curl up together on lazy Sunday mornings, back when they were happy. That's my sister Katie, Emily began. She moved in about 3 weeks ago. She's been going through a really difficult time. Her ex-boyfriend, She paused, choosing her words carefully. Let's just say he wasn't treating her well. She needed somewhere safe to stay with the baby. I didn't know you had a sister, Alexander said quietly. Emily's expression flickered with something he couldn't quite read. We reconnected after the divorce. She lives in Seattle. Lived in Seattle, I mean. Until recently. The unspoken words hung between them. There was a lot Alexander didn't know about Emily's life anymore. A lot he had never bothered to learn even when they were married, because he had been too busy with work to pay attention to the details of her family, her friendships, her world beyond their relationship. The baby's name is Sophie, Emily continued. She's 6 months old, and apparently when Katie was texting Sophie's father this morning, asking him to bring formula, she accidentally sent it to you instead. Sophie's father is also named Alex. It's complicated, Emily sighed. They're not together anymore. But yes, his name is Alex Rodriguez. Katie has both of you saved as Alex in her phone. She must have selected the wrong contact. Alexander let out a long breath, feeling the tension slowly drain from his shoulders. So there's no baby. No baby, Emily confirmed. Then she tilted her head. Well, there is a baby, just not mine. You remarried. I did. Her voice was careful, neutral. 6 months ago. Where is he? He's a doctor. Volunteering overseas. He's been gone for 2 months. Emily looked down at her hands. We're actually separated. It wasn't working out. Alexander didn't know what to say to that. Part of him felt a surge of something he knew he had no right to feel. Hope, maybe. Or vindication. But mostly he just felt sad. Sad that Emily had tried to find happiness with someone else and it hadn't worked. Sad that they had both been stumbling through the past 2 years, trying to figure out how to live without each other. Katie emerged from the kitchen, holding Sophie, who was now contentedly drinking from a bottle. The relief on Katie's face was visible. I am so sorry, Katie said to Alexander. I didn't realize until Emily showed me. I've been so sleep-deprived I can barely see straight. When Sophie started crying and we were out of formula, I just grabbed my phone and texted Alex without checking which one. It's okay, Alexander said. And surprisingly, he meant it. Yes, he had left an important meeting. Yes, he had panicked and completely overreacted. But standing here in Emily's apartment watching this little family unit they had created, he didn't regret coming. Thank you for bringing it, Katie continued. Seriously, you saved us. We were about to have a complete meltdown here. Sophie had finished her bottle and was looking around with curious eyes. When her gaze landed on Alexander, she smiled. A big gummy smile that made his heart do something strange in his chest. She likes you, Emily said softly. Alexander looked at Emily and found her watching him with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. There was wariness there, yes. They had hurt each other too much for there not to be. But there was something else too. Something that looked almost like curiosity. I should go, Alexander said, standing up. I'm sorry for barging in like this. When I got the text, I thought... He trailed off, not sure how to finish that sentence without revealing too much. You thought I had a baby, Emily finished for him. Yeah, and you came anyway, even though that would mean I had a baby with someone else. Alexander met her eyes. You needed help, or at least I thought you did. Emily stood up too, walking him toward the door. At the threshold, she touched his arm lightly. Thank you, Alex, for coming. For caring enough to drop everything and come, even after everything we've been through. I always cared, he said quietly. That was never the problem. I know, she said. The problem was that you cared about everything else just as much. It was the truth, and they both knew it. Alexander had loved Emily, but he had also loved his company, his success, his reputation, his money. He had tried to split himself into pieces, giving everyone and everything a portion of his attention, never realizing that Emily needed more than a portion. She needed all of him, or at least enough of him to build a life on. I bought 3 containers, Alexander said, gesturing to the formula still on the coffee table, in case you needed extras. Emily smiled, a real smile this time. Always thorough. Some things never change. Some things do, he found himself saying. She looked at him for a long moment, and Alexander wondered what she was seeing. Did she see the same workaholic who had chosen conference calls over conversations? Or could she see the man who had just walked out of a board meeting because he thought she needed him? Maybe they do, Emily said finally. As Alexander walked back to his car, his phone was buzzing with messages from Jennifer about the chaos his sudden departure had caused. The investors were confused. The board members were concerned. His business partner was demanding to know what was going on. But for the first time in years, Alexander didn't immediately reach for his phone to fix everything. Instead, he sat in his car, staring up at Emily's window, and let himself feel all the things he had been pushing down for 2 years. He had lost her. He had let the best thing in his life walk away because he couldn't figure out how to make room for her alongside his ambition. But maybe, just maybe, the universe had given him the strangest second chance he could have imagined. A mistaken text message, a baby who wasn't even hers, and the sudden undeniable realization that he would do it all again in a heartbeat if she needed him. Alexander told himself he wouldn't go back. That first visit had been a fluke, a misunderstanding that led to an awkward but ultimately meaningless reunion. He and Emily were done. They had been done for 2 years. She was married to someone else, even if that marriage was currently falling apart. He needed to focus on his company, on the merger that was taking up every spare moment of his time. That's what he told himself on Monday. By Wednesday, he was standing outside a hardware store staring at his phone. Emily had texted him that morning. A real text this time, intentional and direct. Hey, the kitchen sink is leaking and I can't get anyone to come look at it until next week. I know this is weird to ask, but do you remember how to fix it? You used to be good at that stuff. He did remember, back when they were first married, before the company had exploded into what it was now. He used to fix things around their apartment. He had actually enjoyed it. The simple satisfaction of solving a problem with his hands instead of his mind. Alexander looked at his calendar. He had a lunch meeting with potential investors in an hour. After that, 3 back-to-back conference calls. Then a dinner with his business partner to discuss the merger terms. He texted Emily back. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Then he called Jennifer and told her to reschedule the lunch meeting. When Emily opened the door this time, she looked surprised. That was fast. I honestly didn't think you'd come. You need help with the sink, he said simply, holding up the toolbox he kept in his car for emergencies. I'm here to help. Katie was in the living room with Sophie, who was lying on a playmat reaching for colorful toys hanging above her. She looked up when Alexander entered and gave him a grateful smile. You're a lifesaver, Katie said. We've had a bucket under there for 2 days. I was starting to think we'd need to learn to swim. Alexander found himself smiling back as he headed into the kitchen. The leak wasn't bad. Just a loose connection that needed tightening and a worn washer that needed replacing. Simple fix. 20 minutes tops. Except Emily came into the kitchen while he was working, and suddenly nothing felt simple anymore. She leaned against the counter, watching him work. You really didn't have to drop everything and come over. I know, he said, adjusting the wrench. Don't you have meetings or something? It's Wednesday afternoon. You used to have Wednesday afternoon blocked solid. I rescheduled. He could feel her staring at him. You rescheduled? You never rescheduled. I once asked you to reschedule a meeting so we could go to my mom's birthday dinner. And you told me the meeting was with investors from Tokyo and couldn't be moved. Alexander paused, the wrench still in his hand. He remembered that. He remembered the look on Emily's face when he had chosen that meeting over her mother's birthday. He remembered how she had gone to the dinner alone and come home with red eyes that she tried to hide from him. I was wrong about a lot of things, he said quietly. Emily didn't respond right away. He could hear Sophie making happy, gurgling sounds in the other room. Could hear Katie talking to her in that high-pitched voice people use with babies. Fixed it, Alexander announced, testing the connection one more time. Should be good now. Thank you. Emily's voice was soft. Really? Thank you. He packed up his tools and washed his hands in the now functioning sink. When he turned around, Emily was still standing there, her arms crossed, looking at him like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Alex, why did you really come? And don't say it's because of the sink. He dried his hands slowly, buying time to figure out how to answer that. Why had he come? Because she asked. Because for 2 years he had been living in a penthouse apartment that felt more like a hotel than a home. Because the empire he had built suddenly felt hollow when he came back to it every night alone. Because that mistaken text message had reminded him of everything he had lost, and he couldn't seem to stop himself from reaching for it again. I don't know, he finally admitted. I just knew you needed something and I could help, so I came. Before Emily could respond, Sophie started crying. Katie appeared in the doorway, bouncing the baby gently. I think someone's getting hungry again. Em, can you grab a bottle? Of course. Emily moved toward the refrigerator, then paused. Alex, do you want to stay for coffee? It's the least I can do. He should say no. He should leave and go back to his office and stop inserting himself into Emily's life. But he found himself nodding instead. 20 minutes later, they were sitting on the couch with mugs of coffee while Katie fed Sophie in the bedroom. The apartment was quiet except for the occasional baby sound filtering through the walls. So your husband? Alexander started, then stopped. Sorry, that's none of my business. David, Emily supplied. His name is David Chen. Yes, same last name. Weird coincidence. Is he a good guy? Emily took a sip of her coffee. He's a great guy. That's actually part of the problem. He's kind. He's dedicated to his work. He wants to save the world through medicine. On paper, he's perfect, but I married him for the wrong reasons. She looked down at her mug. I married him because he wasn't you. Because he came home every night at 6. Because he asked me about my day and actually listened to the answer. Because he wanted kids right away and didn't make me feel like I was asking for the moon. Alexander felt each word like a punch to the gut. Emily, I'm not telling you this to hurt you, she interrupted. I'm telling you because you asked and because I think I owe you honesty at this point. David is wonderful, but I didn't love him the way I should have. I loved what he represented, stability, presence, a future that felt certain. What changed? He left for this medical mission 2 months ago. 8 weeks in South America, helping communities that don't have access to good health care. And I realized that I didn't miss him the way a wife should miss her husband. I missed the routine. I missed having someone there, but I didn't miss him. Sophie's cry echoed from the bedroom, followed by Katie's soothing voice. Katie showed up 3 weeks after David left, Emily continued. She called me in the middle of the night crying, saying she needed help. I hadn't talked to her in over a year. We had drifted apart after Mom died, both dealing with grief in our own ways. But she needed me, and suddenly I had this purpose again, taking care of her and Sophie, helping them get back on their feet. It reminded me of who I used to be before I got so lost in trying to find the perfect life. You were never lost, Alexander said. You were the one who had it figured out. I was the one who was lost. Emily smiled sadly. We were both lost, Alex, just in different ways. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared history filling the space between them. Can I ask you something? Emily said. That day you showed up with the formula. When you thought I had a baby, how did you feel? Alexander considered lying, considered deflecting, but Emily had been honest with him. He owed her the same. Devastated, he admitted. I felt like I had lost something I didn't even know I still wanted. And then when I realized the baby wasn't yours, I felt relieved, which made me feel guilty. Because you deserve to have everything you ever wanted, even if it's not with me. Alex, I know I don't have the right to feel that way, he continued. I'm the one who messed everything up. I chose board meetings over you. I chose success over us. I let you walk away because some part of me thought the company was more important. And now I'm sitting here realizing that I built this incredible empire and I have no one to share it with. No one who cares if I close a deal or lose a client. No one who asks me how my day was and actually wants to hear the answer. Emily set down her coffee mug. Is that why you keep coming back? Because you're lonely? No. He met her eyes. I'm coming back because that text message reminded me of something I've been trying to forget for 2 years. I'm still in love with you, Emily. I probably never stopped. The words hung in the air between them, impossible to take back. Emily's eyes filled with tears. You can't just say that. Why not? It's true. Because I'm married, Alex, because we tried this already and it didn't work. Because you broke my heart so completely that I had to marry someone else just to convince myself I could move on. Because Katie appeared in the doorway, Sophie asleep on her shoulder. She took one look at them and quietly turned around. I'm going to take her for a walk, she announced. We'll be gone for an hour. The door closed behind her and suddenly Emily and Alexander were alone. I've changed, Alexander said quietly. I know that's what everyone says. I know it probably sounds like empty words. But that meeting I walked out of last week, that was the biggest investor presentation of the year, and I left. I chose coming to you over closing a deal that could have been worth millions. Once, Emily said. You did it once, Alex. That doesn't erase 3 years of choosing work over me. You're right. It doesn't, but it's a start. Emily stood up, pacing to the window. My marriage is ending. Katie is living with me and depending on me. I have a sister and a niece who need stability right now. This is the worst possible time for you to show up and tell me you're still in love with me. I know. I can't do this again. I can't let myself hope that you've changed only to watch you slip back into the same patterns. I understand. Emily turned to face him, tears streaming down her cheeks. Then why are you here? Alexander stood up, but he didn't move closer. He just looked at her. This woman he had loved and lost and still couldn't seem to let go of. Because when I thought you needed me, nothing else mattered. Not the company, not the meetings, not the merger that everyone keeps saying will make or break us. None of it mattered as much as getting to you. And if that's not proof that I've changed, I don't know what is. 3 weeks passed after that conversation, and Alexander didn't hear from Emily. He had left her apartment that day with her words still ringing in his ears. She needed time. She needed space. She needed to figure out what she was doing with her life before she could even think about what he had said. So he gave her that space, even though every day felt like pulling teeth. He threw himself back into work, but it was different now. He found himself leaving the office at 6 instead of 9. He found himself declining dinner meetings in favor of going home. His business partner noticed. Jennifer noticed. Everyone noticed. You feeling okay, boss? Jennifer asked one afternoon, standing in the doorway of his office. You've been different lately. Different how? Alexander looked up from his laptop. I don't know. Present? You're actually here, but you're also not here the way you used to be. Like your mind isn't racing ahead to the next 12 things on your schedule. Alexander leaned back in his chair. Is that a bad thing? No, Jennifer said carefully. It's just different. The team was wondering if something happened. Something had happened. He had remembered what it felt like to care about something more than profit margins and quarterly reports. But he couldn't explain that to Jennifer, so he just smiled and told her he was fine. The text came on a Thursday evening while he was sitting in his apartment, staring at a dinner he had no appetite for. It was from Katie, not Emily. Hey, this is Emily's sister. I know this is weird, but I need your help. Can you call me? Alexander's heart started racing. He dialed her number immediately. Thank God, Katie answered on the first ring. She sounded stressed, her voice tight with worry. I didn't know who else to call. What's wrong? Is Emily okay? Is Sophie okay? Sophie's fine. Emily's fine. Physically, anyway. But Sophie's father showed up tonight. Alex Rodriguez. He's been drinking and he's demanding to see Sophie. Emily's trying to handle it, but he's getting aggressive and I'm scared. Alexander was already grabbing his keys. I'm on my way. Don't let him in. Call the police if he tries to force his way inside. Emily doesn't want to call the police. She's afraid it'll make things worse. Katie, if he's drunk and aggressive, it's already worse. Call them. I'll be there in 15 minutes. He made it in 12, parking haphazardly in front of Emily's building. He could hear the shouting before he even reached her floor. A man's voice, slurred and angry, demanding to see his daughter. Emily's voice, calm but firm, trying to reason with him. Alexander's hands clenched into fists as he approached the door. Alex, you need to leave, Emily was saying. You can see Sophie tomorrow when you're sober. We can arrange a supervised visit, but not like this. Don't tell me when I can see my own daughter, the man shouted. You and your sister, you think you can just take her away from me? I have rights. You gave up those rights when you put your hands on Katie, Emily said, her voice harder now. And you're not coming near Sophie while you're like this. Alexander knocked on the door. The shouting stopped abruptly. Who's that? Rodriguez demanded. You got someone in there? You got your boyfriend hiding in there? Emily opened the door and the relief on her face when she saw Alexander was visible. Behind her, he could see Katie holding Sophie in the bedroom doorway, the baby mercifully asleep despite the chaos. Rodriguez was in his early 30s, disheveled and swaying slightly. His eyes were red and he smelled like whiskey from 3 feet away. When he saw Alexander, his expression twisted into something ugly. Who the hell are you? I'm someone who's going to ask you nicely to leave, Alexander said calmly. Once, Rodriguez laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. Or what, you think you can make me? You think just because you show up in your fancy suit you can tell me what to do? I think you're drunk and you're scaring people who don't deserve to be scared. I think your daughter is sleeping in the next room, and you're going to wake her up and terrify her. And I think if you don't leave right now, the police are going to make you leave. Emily doesn't have the guts to call the cops. She doesn't have to. Alexander pulled out his phone. I already did. They're about 3 minutes away. It was a bluff, but Rodriguez didn't know that. Alexander watched the calculation happen behind the man's bloodshot eyes. Fight or flight. Stay and deal with the police or leave and try again another day. Rodriguez pointed a finger at Katie. This isn't over. Sophie is my daughter. You can't keep her from me. You're right, Alexander said. But the courts can. And they will if you keep this up. You want to see your daughter? Get sober, get help. Do it the right way. But showing up drunk and threatening people? That's not going to get you anywhere except arrested. For a moment, Rodriguez looked like he might take a swing. Alexander braced himself, ready for it. But then the fight seemed to drain out of the man. His shoulders slumped, and he backed toward the stairs. This isn't over, he repeated. But the threat sounded hollow now. They watched him stumble down the stairs and out of the building. Only when he was gone did Alexander feel the tension leave his body. Emily closed and locked the door, then leaned against it, her hands shaking. Are you okay? Alexander asked. She nodded, but tears were starting to stream down her face. Katie came out of the bedroom, still holding Sophie, and the two sisters looked at each other for a long moment. Then Katie started crying too. I'm sorry, Katie sobbed. I'm so sorry. I never should have gotten you involved in this. He's getting worse. He keeps showing up and I don't know what to do. Emily crossed to her sister and wrapped her arms around both Katie and the baby. You didn't get me involved. You're my sister. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Alexander felt like he was intruding on a private moment. I should go. But Katie, you need to file a restraining order. First thing tomorrow. I can help with that. I know some lawyers who specialize in family law. We can't afford lawyers, Katie said quietly. You're not paying. I am. Both women looked at him. Alex, we can't ask you to do that, Emily said. You're not asking. I'm offering. Katie, you and Sophie need protection. Legal protection. Let me help. Katie looked at Emily, who nodded slowly. Okay, Katie whispered. Thank you. After Katie took Sophie back to the bedroom, Emily and Alexander stood in the living room, the adrenaline slowly fading and leaving exhaustion in its wake. How did you get here so fast? Emily asked. Katie texted me. I was already on my way when I called. She texted you? Why would she have your number? Alexander pulled out his phone and showed her. She asked for it last time I was here. Said just in case they ever needed anything. I guess tonight they needed something. Emily sank onto the couch looking completely drained. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't shown up. He's never been that bad before. Usually he just yells for a few minutes and then leaves. But tonight he was drunk and angry and looking for someone to blame. Alexander sat down next to her, careful to leave space between them. Has this been happening a lot? Twice before, but he's always left when I asked him to. This was different. Emily, you need to take this seriously. Men like that, they escalate. Katie needs that restraining order and you need to make sure this building has better security. I know. You're right. I just keep hoping he'll get his act together. For Sophie's sake, you know? Every kid deserves to have their father in their life. Not if that father is going to hurt them, or hurt the people protecting them. Emily turned to look at him, really look at him. You didn't hesitate. Katie texted you and you just came. Of course I came. Even though I haven't talked to you in 3 weeks? Even though I basically told you there was no chance for us? Alexander met her eyes. Emily, you could tell me to never contact you again, and if you called tomorrow and said you needed me, I would still come. That's not going to change. She looked away, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. Why are you doing this? Why are you being this person now when you couldn't be this person when we were married? It was the question he had been asking himself for weeks. I don't know. Maybe I had to lose you to understand what I had. Maybe I was too young and too stupid and too obsessed with proving something that didn't matter. Or maybe I'm finally becoming the person I always should have been. Just a few years too late. Emily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. My husband comes back from South America in 2 weeks. I have to tell him I want a divorce. Katie's ex is spiraling, and I have no idea how to keep her and Sophie safe. My life is a complete mess right now. Alex, I know. I can't deal with you being in love with me on top of everything else. I know that too. But I'm really glad you were here tonight. Alexander reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hand in his. I'm glad I was here too. And Emily, I'm here for whatever you need. If that's just someone to fix your sink and scare off your sister's ex, I can do that. If that's someone to help you through your divorce and figure out the legal stuff with Katie, I can do that too. And if somewhere down the line, after everything else is sorted out, you want to see if we can find our way back to each other, I'll be here for that as well. Emily squeezed his hand. I don't deserve you showing up like this. You deserve someone who shows up. Always. I'm just sorry it took me so long to figure out how. They sat there in the quiet apartment, holding hands while Katie sang a soft lullaby to Sophie in the next room. It wasn't romance. It wasn't a happy ending. It was just two people who had loved each other and hurt each other, trying to figure out if there was still something worth saving. But for the first time in 2 years, Alexander felt like maybe, just maybe, there was hope. 6 months later, Alexander sat in his car outside Emily's building, staring at a text message on his phone. It was from Emily and it was simple, just 5 words that made his heart race. Can you come over today? A lot had happened in those 6 months. Katie had gotten the restraining order with help from the lawyers Alexander had hired. Rodriguez had violated it twice and now he was looking at jail time. Katie had found a job at a local clinic and was slowly rebuilding her life. Sophie had grown from a 6-month-old baby into a 1-year-old toddler who was just starting to walk, usually straight toward whatever she wasn't supposed to touch, and Emily had divorced her husband. It had been amicable, as far as divorces go. David had returned from South America, and they had talked for hours. He was a good man who deserved someone who loved him completely, not someone who was still trying to figure out her own heart. They had signed the papers 2 months ago. Alexander had stayed away during all of it. Well, mostly away. He still came over to fix things when Emily asked. He had installed better locks on all the doors and windows. He had helped Katie move her furniture when she finally got her own apartment last month. He had even taught Sophie how to stack blocks, which resulted in her immediately knocking them down and laughing hysterically. But he had kept his distance emotionally. He had meant what he said that night. He was there for whatever Emily needed, but he wasn't going to push. She had too much on her plate to deal with his feelings on top of everything else. Now, standing outside her door, Alexander took a deep breath and knocked. Emily answered immediately, like she had been waiting right there. She looked different. Her hair was shorter, cut to her shoulders in a way that made her look younger somehow. She was wearing jeans and a simple blue sweater, and she was smiling. "Hey," she said. "Hey, you said you needed something?" "I do. Come in." The apartment was quieter than usual. "Where's Katie and Sophie?"
Katie took her to the park.
I asked her to give us some time alone. Alexander's pulse quickened. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. Better than fine, actually. Sit down." He sat on the couch, the same spot where he had sat so many times over the past months. Emily sat next to him, closer than she usually did. She was nervous, he could tell. She kept tucking her hair behind her ear, a gesture he remembered from when they were married. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Emily began. "About us. About what happened. About what's been happening." "Okay. You've been showing up, Alex. For 6 months you've been showing up. When I needed help with the door locks, you came. When Katie needed legal advice, you handled it. When I was having a breakdown, because the divorce papers came through and I felt like I was failing at everything, you sat with me for 4 hours and let me cry on your shoulder." "Emily, you don't have to. Let me finish." She took his hand, and Alexander felt that familiar electricity that had never really gone away. "You've been patient. You've been kind. You've been everything I needed you to be without asking for anything in return. And I realized something." She paused, taking a shaky breath. "I realized that I never stopped loving you either. I tried. God knows I tried. I married David hoping I could move on. But you can't move on from someone who still has half your heart. And then you showed up with that baby formula looking all panicked and confused, and something inside me just woke up." Alexander couldn't breathe. He couldn't move. He could only stare at her, afraid that if he said anything, this moment would shatter like glass. "I was so angry at you for so long," Emily continued, her eyes filling with tears.
"Angry that you chose work over me?"
"Angry that you let me walk away. Angry that you didn't fight for us. But watching you these past months, seeing you drop everything when Katie called, seeing you play with Sophie like she was your own niece, seeing you actually leave your office at 6 o'clock because you promised to help me paint the bathroom, I realized something else." "What?" "You did change. You really actually changed. And I kept waiting for you to slip back into your old patterns. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. But it never did. You just kept showing up." A tear rolled down her cheek, and Alexander reached up to wipe it away with his thumb. "I'm not asking you to be perfect," Emily said. "I know you'll have busy weeks. I know there will be important meetings and deals that need your attention. I'm not asking you to stop being ambitious or successful. I just needed to know that when it matters, when I really need you, you'll be there. And you've proven that over and over again." "Emily, I want to try again," she interrupted, the words coming out in a rush. "I want to see if we can do this right this time. Slowly, carefully. But I want to try." Alexander felt like his heart might burst right out of his chest. "Are you sure?" "Because Emily, if we do this, I need you to know that I'm all in. I'm not going to make the same mistakes twice. I've already stepped back from the day-to-day operations at the company. I promoted Jennifer to COO, and she's doing an incredible job. I'm still involved, still on the board, but I'm not drowning in it anymore. I've learned how to delegate. I've learned that the company doesn't fall apart if I'm not there 18 hours a day." Emily smiled through her tears. "I know, I've noticed. Your assistant sent me a fruit basket last month as a thank you for whatever magic I worked on you. She said you're like a different person." "I am a different person. You made me want to be better." "No," Emily said firmly. "You made yourself better. I just gave you a reason to want to." They sat there for a moment, hands clasped, years of hurt and hope and history flowing between them. "So what happens now?" Alexander asked. "Now we take it slow. We go on actual dates. We talk about things. We go to therapy together because I think we both need that. We figure out how to be partners instead of two people competing for space in the same life. I can do slow. I can do therapy. I can do whatever you need." Emily leaned her head against his shoulder. "I need you to kiss me. I've been wanting you to kiss me for 3 months, but I was too scared to say it." Alexander cupped her face in his hands, looking into the eyes of the woman he had loved and lost and somehow found again. "I love you. I never stopped and I never will. I love you too. Even when I didn't want to, even when I tried not to, I never stopped either." When he kissed her, it felt like coming home, Like finding something precious that had been lost. Like getting a second chance at something most people only get once. When they finally pulled apart, Emily was laughing and crying at the same time. A mistaken text message. That's what brought us back together. A mistaken text message about baby formula. Best mistake that ever happened to me. Katie's going to be insufferable about this, you know. She's been saying for months that we were going to get back together. Katie's a smart woman. The door burst open, and speak of the devil, Katie walked in with Sophie in her arms. The little girl saw Alexander and immediately reached for him, babbling excitedly. Ale, Ale! It was her version of his name, and it made his heart melt every time. Katie took one look at them, at their linked hands and tear-stained smiles, and her face lit up. Finally! Oh my God, finally! Do you know how hard it's been watching you two dance around each other for months? I was about to lock you in a room together. Sophie wiggled out of Katie's arms and toddled over to them, falling into Alexander's lap with a giggle. He caught her easily, settling her against his chest while she played with his tie. We're going to take things slow, Emily said to her sister, but she was smiling. Sure you are, Katie said with a knowing grin. Just like Alex was going to stay away and not fall back in love with you. We all saw how that worked out. Alexander looked at the three of them, these women who had somehow become his family over the past months. Katie, who had trusted him to protect her daughter. Sophie, who had taught him that the best moments in life weren't in boardrooms. And Emily, who had given him the greatest gift anyone could give, a second chance. 3 months later, Emily texted Alexander a photo. It was a pregnancy test, and it was positive. His hands were shaking as he typed back, "On my way." He made it to her apartment in record time, and when she opened the door, she was crying and laughing all at once. "I thought you'd be scared," she said. "I thought maybe it was too soon." Alexander pulled her into his arms, feeling happier than he had ever felt in his entire life. "It's not too soon. It's perfect. You're perfect. All of this is perfect. We're not even married yet. So let's fix that. Marry me, Emily, for real this time. Marry me and let me spend the rest of my life proving that I'm the man you always deserved." She kissed him, and he tasted the salt of her happy tears. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. Later, when they told Katie the news, she just shook her head with a smile. A mistaken text about baby formula, and now you're actually going to need baby formula. Life is weird. Life is perfect, Alexander corrected, his arm around Emily, his hand resting on her stomach where their baby was growing. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, he actually meant it. The message that had started it all was still saved in his phone. He looked at it sometimes, amazed at how one mistake had changed everything, how a text meant for someone else had brought him back to the only person who had ever really mattered. "Thank you," he whispered to Emily that night as they lay in bed, her head on his chest. "For what? For giving me another chance. For seeing that I could change. For not giving up on us." Emily tilted her head up to look at him. "You know what's funny? I spent years waiting for you to put me first, and then when we weren't even together, you did. You put me first over and over again, not because you had to, but because you wanted to. Because I finally understood what I had lost, and I was determined not to lose it again." "Well," Emily said, snuggling closer, "you're not losing it. Not now, not ever." And as Alexander drifted off to sleep, holding the woman he loved, thinking about the family they were building together, he realized that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes they come from a mistaken message that was never meant for you at all.